Hello and welcome to Taking Liberties Radio, episode 9 for season 8. No, season 6, because I just read 2 years in the future because, hello, welcome to the future. No, not really. I'm Lee, I'm in Western Australia. We have a full house tonight. We're going to be talking about federal budgets because that's how we do it here. I'm joined by Vickers.
Also, because it came out in the last week.
Yeah, we could not talk about it if it's our podcast. We can do what we like. You know, we can not talk about the budget. We can talk about something else. Avengers is coming out soon. We can talk about the Avengers for like a whole half hour, I reckon. Easy. Let's do that instead. No, let's not.
Let's not.
So we got Vickers. We've got Tammy, the very husky voice Tammy, so hopefully her voice can hold out.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. Yes, I'm very close to losing my voice, so I'm gonna try and last for the hour.
Yep. And then we've got Steve in Melbourne, and hopefully his data will hold out.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
How's that NBN working out for you, buddy?
Oh, just so well. I'm so happy. One day we'll get it, maybe in the next century.
Yeah. Just gotta stick with the smoke signal dial-up while you wait.
Absolutely.
I'm honestly surprised he isn't. I'm honestly surprised he isn't just posting me a USB disc every week. Here are my thoughts.
Yeah.
What's happened in the
Cuba
last
style, like once a week you'll get all the soap operas, and then there's Vive's audio just in the mix. All right, let's talk budgets. So this is the budget that came out. I mean, the election's expected to be announced either tomorrow or next weekend. The budget was on Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday. And we've got a bunch of...
think about that.
I just need to make sure that we haven't missed a week, because sometimes that happens. Like, we'll miss a week and talk about a thing from the week before. Also, you know, everybody knows how much I love politicians and how much they talk, so missing these things is obvious. All right, we've got tax cuts. We've got lots and lots and lots of goodies being spent. Let's maybe... Who wants to go first with, like, their first thing? Because, I mean, there is
You mean about the magic pudding? The magic pudding?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
No, I called it the magic. Like I made a joke just before the budget came out, going like, here is my. I'm breaking embargo. Here's a picture of what I've got, and I just put the magic pudding on there.
Yeah.
Because this is pretty much that budget. I mean, they're back in black. So
back in black next year.
On figures.
Sure,
So
but I mean, every budget's like that. Every budget's like that, mate.
Exactly. It's all predictions.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sizable. They've got a 1% GDP potential. Is it 1%? It's 7 billion. So it's not 1%. It's closer to 2%. So they've got closer to 2% budget to hit that back in black, which means they should do it fairly comfortably, barring like a massive lack of income somehow. I don't think we've seen a fall of tax receipts equivalent to that, but I'm not going to say like it could never happen. You know, it could happen.
Could the federal government find a way to spend $7 billion or whatever? I mean, what was the projected?
It was about 7.4 or something.
Yeah, I mean,
$7.4 billion.
You know, there's probably a way they can spend that money to get rid of. You know, like
they could give it to me.
That would be useful. I could definitely do $7 billion. That's for sure. I mean, you know, I guess. I mean, on the topic of projected surpluses, I mean, I think there's always a combination of how much can you really trust the people who are making up the numbers, how much can you trust politicians to not start spending money they don't have, so I mean, I think it's a combination of those two things, which is why...
Depends. See, here's the thing. You could have made that same argument about Peter Costello and John Howard, and yet they managed to pull off 11 budget surpluses.
Sure.
And that's just...
And you could say that they did that after they actually did it. Like, this is just a question of how much credit do you want to give a government for things they haven't actually done yet? And I want to give them zero credit. I want them to give them no credit whatsoever, because
that's actually a good point, because nobody gave Howard and Costello the credit for the budget surpluses until they delivered them.
Yeah.
So that is. I mean, in all fairness, we should hold the present Liberal lot to the same standards. And look, I don't think it's bad if they deliver surpluses. I would like to see that debt get paid down a little.
Sure.
And if you're wondering why should we pay down debt, the answer is pretty freaking obvious. Every dollar that's in debt is another dollar that the government is paying for interest, rather than paying off rather than paying for the programs that it's meant to be paying for.
Sure.
Now, ideally, I would like the program spending to come down. I would like the tax to come down.
Yeah.
But, you know, while we still have those programs running, I would rather them not accumulate debt. That's just a personal preference.
Sure. I mean, like,
All
sorry,
right, Tammy, what's your take on all of this business?
Sorry, were you asking me just then? Yeah. So basically,
go.
thank you. I mean, I think at the moment they've run a fabulous campaign with it. Visually, it's beautiful. Whether it's going to benefit them in the coming election or not, it's difficult to say. I think, like you've said, it is a prediction. I think the Australian voter is smart. Most of the time, the Australian voter is smart enough to understand that. However, as we were talking about before, just off air, I mean, some of these tax cuts, they're not going to come into effect. Was it 2024?
Yeah.
2024-25 budget.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
2 elections from now. 2 elections.
Exactly. So it's easy to say, if we don't get back in, you're not going to get it, pretty much.
By the way, I have to admit, Labor's been hounding this like tax cuts thing as like this massively terrible thing, right? It's just like, oh, the rich are getting so much more of a tax cut than the poor. But I looked at it's actually a really, there is a lot for middle class Australia in there. Okay, so let me give you an idea. Like the effectively the the tax free threshold is pretty much doubling, right?
Yep.
It's going up to 37,000. Then your tax rate is going. Your tax rate is going down from 19% to 16%, from 37,000 to 45, from 45,000 to 200,000. That currently encompasses the 37 to 87,000 and the 87 to 187,000 brackets. That 32 and 37% respectively, down to 30. The top tax rate, despite the fact that it's going up to 200,000, cutting in at 200,000, is not changing. It's going to stay at 45%. These are actually really good tax cuts for middle class Australia. I have no idea what they're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The middle class is going to be the one that benefits really the most out of this, is the majority of people. I mean, if you think about, I hate when they throw around, 100,000, you're saying people who earn 100,000 a year shouldn't be, taxed.
That's actually, according to the stats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, according to the stats, a dual income earning family is about somewhere between 130 and 150,000 if they're working full time now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, at least the ABS stats indicate that, and I know that the unions have been saying, "Oh, that's the average income." It doesn't talk about the median income, but here's the difference: the median income includes part-time workers. The average income is only based on full-time workers. So, I mean, take which stat you want. Ideally, what I'd like is to see what the modal income looks like. I just want to see what your everyday man is actually earning.
Sure, that's
the
fine.
one
I've literally never heard anybody talking about modal things outside of like high school maths. So you can tell who the engineer in this discussion is because they're talking about maths. Which is just funny. Fine. No, it's a fair point.
I'm saying, like, from a public policy perspective, this actually really frustrates me because I'm like an engineer and I sit there going like, why are you guys talking about averages and medians? You want to talk about the modal income when it comes to, like, shaping public policy, because that's the biggest chunk of your population.
Yeah.
That's what the biggest chunk of your population is earning. You need to base your public policy around that. I don't know why it seems to escape people, but like I sit there and go like, it seems obvious to me, but maybe statisticians know something I don't.
Sure.
Or public policy people know something I don't.
Yeah.
What's your take on this, Steve? Like, tell us what you think of it.
I think this is a big spending budget. Tax cuts that won't necessarily help the Liberals win the election, because the Liberals have cut taxes enough to really drive the message home that that's what they're about. They've been flailing about an agenda for the last few years, replacing one leader after another, and I think that I'm all in favour of tax cuts, but I just don't think that current government has the intellectual firepower, the marketing nous, whatever you want to call it, or both, to hammer home the message that they're better and they're going to improve living standards for people. I wish they could pull it off in some ways because, tax cuts aren't necessarily a bad thing, but I doubt it. And apart from that, there's just billions and billions of dollars being spent on everything, and there's the usual idea that the fact that the government is spending money on something is good in itself, with no regard to the no regard to what the benefit is of the project that they're spending on. It's just, big money figures in the air, 100 billion on infrastructure. They could build it on a bridge to no one would really care. It's just a nice big number that they can pull out of there.
Yeah, but Steve, they're spending $800,000 on additional support for Australia Day activities and funding to undertake a review of the National Australia Day Council program. I mean, clearly, money well spent.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly.
Oh, and $500 million on a revamp of the Anzac Museum. It's just small change, isn't it? I mean, this is incredible what they'll do.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on, I do want to share something. One second.
Okay.
So
which is going to be only useful to anybody who's watching the YouTube video. So
So if you are listening to us, go to the YouTube channel, take a look at this.
Subscribe while you're there. Subscribe while you're there.
Yeah. So I love this item. I look this up every year. So as you can see, the tax integrity extension expansion of the ATO tax avoidance task force on large corporates, multinationals, and high wealth individuals. So basically, the guy's chasing all the tax avoidance. This year, as you can see, 175 million. Next year, 1.2 billion. Year after, 1.5 billion. And then 1.6 billion. I like tracking this figure, mostly because it never generates the money that they say they're going to generate. And I think finally they're actually getting a shit ton of money thrown at them. So I think they've been pissing and moaning because, So it looks like they've they're looking for a tenfold increase in money.
Maybe what we'll do, because it's not going to show up on the YouTube either because the writing is too small. Maybe we can put a link in the show notes.
Do you want me to zoom in?
You can, but because you only have a very small amount of screen on my screen, I can only make it so big. So how about
look at me? I'm zoomed right in. Okay, fine. I'm zoomed right in.
I'll see if I can make it bigger for the sake of the YouTube video. Same name with our sex tape. There we go. You get a little bit of it. So we'll put a link of that to the show notes, so you don't have to look at Victor's tiny, tiny screen. Again, innuendo. Okay, so
you say that it's a tiny screen, but I've got a 27-inch 4K monitor here, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Wow.
This is getting too much for me.
This is not what I signed up for.
I don't think we've ever really done sexual innuendo on this show before, but I'm glad we've done it today.
Absolutely. This was the time and the place.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows the level of seriousness we take with this budget. Sorry, as if you were going to say something.
I only want to give the government as much respect for the budgets as they give us as taxpayers.
Yes, agreed.
Well, I'm not sure I have any more profound words to add. I'll just keep harping on to my infrastructure point. I'll add this, that there are plenty of studies to show that infrastructure spending announced prior to an election invariably has massive cost blowout, or is invariably just, press releases to just bring up air and suggest to people that the projects will happen when they don't actually happen at all, which is the case of all the Labor Party is talking about with their fast rail studies again and again and again.
Well,
and the government is doing the same thing
as well. So the coalition
and the government is certainly doing the same thing.
I just got to stop this right now. Look, I understand Zeev comes from Victoria, which is in the habit of paying contractors a lot of money to not build infrastructure. So I understand why he's not used to seeing infrastructure getting built. But the rest of us who are in places where infrastructure does get announced and built do actually get to see the infrastructure. It's just blown out in terms of cost. So like Tammy and I know all about a $1.2 billion 16-kilometre light rail. God, the most expensive light rail project in Australia until New South Wales surpasses it.
My God, yeah, the eastern suburbs in Sydney is just as bad. Yeah, except the Liberals are supporting that one.
Particularly when it's announced prior to an election, it is highly likely that any number they spend is likely to be a blowout. That it's not. It's going to be even more than that because it's just a pre-election thought bubble that they put onto paper. No different to Kevin Rudd saying, "I spent $4 billion on the NBN back in 2007," and it turns out to be something like $80 billion now. Not as extreme as that, but I think the Liberals. Sorry, that was Liberals managed to cut that down to $40 billion. I'm not across the NBN.
No, so the Liberals cut it to like 74 or something from 80 whatever billion. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great achievement. So it's only 10 times the original.
They've only ever still monopolised the wholesale internet market because that's not a problem at all. We've never had a problem with monopolies in telecommunications before.
Yeah.
Never, not one.
And by the way, the NBN has been posting continual deficits of about $2 to $3 billion per year. So when the government says that they're going to have a surplus, you really have to say, okay, we're projecting a $7 billion surplus minus $2 to $3 billion that we're keeping off the books. So it's actually a $4 billion surplus. We're just lying to you about the NBN being profitable ever.
Yep.
And
now, Zeev,
pretty much.
Don't tell lies. Don't be so harsh on them. They're always honest. Like they're always upfront with us. There's nothing to worry about.
Well, the funny thing is, to be perfectly honest, I'll cut the Liberals some slack with respect to keeping the NBN stuff off the books because they didn't start that. That was started by Labor, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that was done on purpose because Labor didn't want people to know the true cost of the NBN.
Yep.
So I mean, I'll grant Liberals some slack with that because they didn't start that.
Well, it's been 2 elections, Vickers. They could have written it off and done this entire exercise when they first got in. They couldn't be bothered because Malcolm Turnbull wanted to rework the NBN. He was the genius who could pull it off, although he obviously hasn't. And now they're paying for it. So,
well, we're paying for it technically.
Well, we're all paying for it. Yes. Yeah.
Did we want to go into the whole polling situation? Because Sammy, you brought up some stuff before we started.
Yes, I've got some stats in front of me. So, all true political tragics should probably follow the Ghost Who Votes on Twitter. See, we were talking about this before you connected with us. So, virtually, they've released some Galaxy polling that earlier this week. Now they've got the Liberals. It's in favour of Labor. So the prediction for the next federal election coming up. So 2-party preferred, Liberals / National Party at 47. So
and this
minus
is
2%.
Which poll is this one? Sorry.
This is Ipsos. Yes, sorry, it was. Yeah, it wasn't the Galaxy. And ALP at 53, so plus 2% swing. So this early on, it's interesting. I believe that this was actually released. This was conducted before the budget was released. So maybe the budgets influenced that a little. Could influence that a little bit. That's not looking very good. Only probably, let's be real, a month out. So, what do you guys think of the prediction for situation for the poor coalition coming up this election?
I'm pretty sure the Liberals are going to be gone, but
it's going to be a wipeout.
See, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure,
particularly in Victoria.
Yeah, Victoria's. Yeah, I feel like Victoria
is going to wipe them out. Victorian Liberal voters. First of all, they're happy with the state government because of all the level crossing removal projects. Second of all, they're unhappy with Malcolm Turnbull being removed. And third of all, I think those 2 factors are just going to wipe them out.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing. Labor is deeply, deeply racist in New South Wales.
It
deeply,
is
very deeply,
wow.
It's the old school Labor.
Yeah,
so the unionised old school Labor.
Yeah, so I sit there going I think New South Wales, provided if they can't. The problem is Bill Shorten is a Victorian, right? And Bill Shorten is very pro-union. And truth be told, Bill Shorten actually isn't that different from Foley and the Foley and what was the name of the other guy? He was so ineffectual I can't even remember his name. The guy who ran in the last election, the one who Gladys beat.
I don't know.
Yeah,
we're not
exactly.
talking about Michael Daly, are we?
Yeah, there we go.
Predecessor.
So ineffectual, can't even remember his name. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so I sit there going like, look, Bill Shorten is a union man. He comes from the same cloth as these guys. And there was that incident. People forget there was that incident where he threw a pie at like this Asian store lady thing, going like, "You call this a meat pie?" And he got really uppity about it. So he has that same sort of
man.
yeah. He's an angry white man at his core. So like if that comes out at some point in the election, I'm pretty sure New South Wales, those 15 what do you call them, marginal electorates in New South Wales will probably carry them over to a very, very thin margin potentially.
Yes.
It's quite possible because of Michael Daly's comments that are so fresh in the mind of the New South Wales electorate that federal Labor could suffer as a result.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Exactly. I mean, I think Victoria it's going to be a landslide, unfortunately. WA and South Australia will be interesting to watch. They Liberals last election had a very strong campaign in South Australia, so much so that the rest of Australia thought that why are we focusing on the subs, South Australian subs in North Queensland? But I think this time around there's going to be some key seats.
Well, that's so it's interesting that you mention that because I actually think the political landscape in Australia is changing with respect to the state by state. We're actually becoming deeply Americanized, and I think Labor is seen to building so Labor first started by building that stronghold here in the ACT, right? There is no way in hell that the Liberals will ever get anything more than a senator in the ACT.
No.
Right? That's it. Right? But they've solidified their position in the ACT. I think they're about to do that to Victoria. And that's actually really bad for the Victorians because they'll effectively have no say in future elections. Right? It's just like being in California.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I don't know about no say in future elections. We'll see what happens. People say Victoria's left wing, blah, 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 but they've elected a lot of Liberals before. So
they have. But what I'm saying is if you take a look at what's shifting there, like the position of they were always, the what do you call them? The dries, the economic dry Liberals. Right? They were very socially liberal, but also economically dry. They didn't really have an appetite for conservatism. And now that they've sort of got more options for that in Victoria, other than the Liberal Party, I think if you start seeing that solidification of the Labor Party mentality in Victoria, I think what Victorians will experience going forward is that their political say declines over time in the federal sphere. Like it's good for Labor because it means Labor has a state that they can count on, but it's bad for the average voter.
The other thing to bear in mind about Victoria is that it has a rapidly rising population from other states. So I think it will have an outsized influence as time goes on in the country because it will outpace Sydney's population growth and outpace Sydney's. It does outpace Sydney's population growth and does.
In all honesty, I'm just going to point to California again because that's literally what happened to California all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Right? They experienced massive population growth from people coming from all around the country, like particularly the Midwest, right? Who found they were like Californians just had more of a liberal mindset. So California's population shot up, and the result of that was their political voice effectively went down.
Wow, I can't help but grimace every time you say left-wing Californian. Even
California is not that left-wing in some ways. It's
no, they elect Republican governors. They just don't have a say in federal politics. In local politics, they have plenty of say, but in federal politics, they got nothing. They are 60. They are always a guaranteed 65 seats for the Democratic Party.
I would not regard the Victorian electorate as a guaranteed win for the Labor Party. Not now.
No, but that's what they're going for.
That's what they're going
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
But I do not see it happening. But I appreciate what you say.
I mean, also,
Yeah.
I suspect that the nature of being essentially a Westminster system means that these things can change probably more easily than in the US. Like I think,
With the Electoral College, yeah.
yeah, so I think it's one of those things that okay, maybe. Well, I mean, going back to how long ago was it where there were like almost every single state? I think South Australia was the only state that didn't have a Liberal government. And now it's completely switched back again. So I mean, I think these things ebb and flow, and to say
you're right. There's lower chance of stratification, and the reason for that is in Australia we can actually give states more seats. So so that is possible that all of a sudden Victoria ends up having more seats in the lower house.
Yeah.
But
and also
with all of
there's
that
no gerrymandering as well.
And there's no gerrymandering.
In a number of states in the US, that's a huge problem.
Yeah. So what I'm actually talking about isn't so much the lower house, because the lower house kind of self-corrects for what I'm talking about. Yeah. But for the upper house, what you'll start seeing is Liberals maybe getting 1, maybe 2 senators from Victoria, if lucky. And basically the result of that is a diminished sort of Victorian presence in the Senate, because the Senate is limited to 12 seats.
Yep. Exactly. Actually, Galaxy Polling's got Victoria for this federal election. The prediction: ALP 42, Liberals 28.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, yeah. And then factoring in the minor parties as well. It's a scary.
That is a wipeout.
Yeah, I'll be honest. My main hope is people that are upset about the Liberal Party redirect their votes to the LDP. That's my hope. That's my hope.
Speaking as a non-financial member, all I can do is laugh.
Yeah. All I can do is laugh. Be a non-financial.
I wish you were right.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that we want to sort of maybe turn to quickly before we wrap things up?
I was interested before I brought it up before. I mean, the minor parties that are, I've been researching a little bit about them at the moment. One Nation, preferences. How much of an impact do you think that this is going to have in the coming election? I mean, we've got Palmer spending, millions of dollars on advertising in key seats that he doesn't essentially have a candidate, although he did promise us that he would have a candidate in every seat. What impact do you think that's going to have on the two parties? And do you think that will dilute the Liberal vote, or maybe dilute the disenfranchised Labor vote as well? I
mean, I think the reality is often populist parties, there's a lot of talk that they will be the next big thing, and they rarely deliver. So, at the moment, the flavour of the month is One Nation. Previously it was Australian Conservatives when, Cory Bernardi swapped and started gobbling up all like Family First and the rest of it. And he's completely gone nowhere. And really Palmer was the one before that. So Palmer came onto the scene. He had 4 senators, all of whom basically left him. And then he didn't run again in, I can't remember what seat he was in. But anyway, in his lower house seat. So, and actually even One Nation itself, like its original incarnation, big splash in one election, and the next election, not so much. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's there's a lot of people in that field now. Like, you have One Nation is very much back. So is Palmer going to, there's one place for sort of right-wing populists to go now. There's now a few different kind of prominent places.
Avenues.
Yeah. So,
has anyone heard from the ALA, Australian Liberty Alliance?
They're dead.
Where are they?
So as far as I can tell, the people that I did know in the ALA are now spruiking. What do you call them? Fraser Anning's conservative group.
Oh, right. Okay.
So as far as I can tell, they've moved on to Fraser Anning.
Right. Okay. Yes.
It's bizarre. I mean, you mentioned Palmer spending, but I think what he is targeting.
Shit! I disconnected, didn't I?
Oh no, we got you. I think we got you.
We got you. But Vickers has disconnected from. Oh, okay.
There we go.
from something else.
From something.
Look, what I would say is that yes, you are back.
There we
Okay.
go. We'll have to bleep you out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I would say about
Sorry, guys. Demonetized.
what I would add is that the Palmer Party is clearly targeting disaffected Liberal voters. That's their message. It's all about make Australia great again. So, in other words, anyone who has vaguely heard of Trump, he's just trying to pull people in. That's his entire campaign platform. He's got nothing else to say on his billboards. And he's targeting low information voters who will somehow associate him with Trump and think they're basically liberals, low information liberals. That's who he's targeting. Is he going to win? I don't think so. He's hoping for a Senate seat. That's what he's really hoping for. But he's running in the lower house. It makes no sense.
He's running in the seat of Herbert, where he's got no chance, really. I mean, there's key seats that you just look at. There's some very high profile Liberal seats. Peter Dutton's seat is very much one to watch. Ken Wyatt's seat. Ken's a lovely man, a great minister, but that is one seat to watch as well, unfortunately, for the Liberals. There's a lot of key seats that Capricornia, for example, that he could be looking at, but he's chosen Herbert. And I understand, that's the nickel refineries there, but that could work against him as well. So, essentially, it's confusing.
Yeah. All right, well, we've basically run out of time, so I
That's
think we'll kind
the
of leave
allegation.
it there. And Vickers may or may not be with us. He's kind of got a weird look on his face. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Wrap things up. Thanks everybody for joining us. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, we'll find out if the elections are going to be happening soon, and we'll be back next week.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Bye.